All right, welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner Waterman chapter of SABR in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. Now, when she's with us, we always start our meetings in what I like to call the traditional fashion. So I'm just going to go right over to Joanne Hulbert, who hopefully has a poem for us. Joanne, what do you got? You'll have to unmute.
Okay. All right. It was way over there. Your picture went huge. Okay. So that's what the problem was. And it went off the screen. Anyway, I looked at what the theme was tonight, and I'm taking a wild guess that it's going to be something to do with deadball players. Okay. So I have brought out my favorite little poem. Luckily for you, it's short, but it just might have something to do, perhaps, with the theme today. So anyway, this is my favorite little Deadball Era poem. My eyes are very misty as I pen these lines to Christy. Oh, my heart is full of heaviness today. May the flowers never wither, Maddie. May the flowers never wither, Maddie. Remember that line. Or your grave in Cincinnati, which you've chosen for your final fade away. That was written in 1916, and you can tell me who it was written about. First on first. Go ahead.
Christy Mathewson.
You got it. You won.
Good job, Raj. All right, next up, I want to go to Jeff Cohen. Jeff, tell me what's going on with the podcast this week, would you?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, on Baseball and BBQ, we have the most faniest fan of the San Francisco Giants, Norm Coleman. He has an impressive collection of memorabilia, I should say. He has an autograph of every single San Francisco Giant that has played from 1958 through today.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So yes, he's on Baseball and BBQ this week. Next week, we have New York Daily News retired sports writer Bill Madden, who wrote a great book on his memoir. So please tune into Baseball and BBQ on all your podcast apps.
If you are not listening to Baseball and Barbecue and you're not aiming your podcatcher to grab that thing every week, you got to do it. You just got to do it. It's one of the best podcasts out there by a SABR member, and you're missing out on a lot. I mean, it's baseball and it's food. What more could you ask for? Point your podcatcher toward Baseball and BBQ today so that you can get in on all the fun.
Thank you, Bruce. How much do I owe you now?
Just the usual amount. Send the check.
Okay.
You know where it goes. All right.
Okay.
Hey, SABR member and friend of our chapter, Gary Mintz, wanted to let everyone know that his Wednesday, August 27th meeting of the New York Giants Preservation Society will have New York Mets historian and Vice President of Alumni Relations, Jay Horowitz, on. Jay is the author of the book, Mr. Met, How a Sports Mad Kid from Jersey Became Like Family to Generations of Big Leaguers, and has been feted by the club in the naming of the Citi Field press box in his honor. 2 years ago, he was also honored with the New York Mets Hall of Fame Achievement Award, too. That's this Wednesday, August 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern. To get on the list to get to that meeting, send an email to giantsguru@gmail.com. All right, so now it's time for our announcement, and I think this is cool. We are very, very pleased to announce the launch of, get this, folks, an as yet unnamed quarterly newsletter. Stay tuned for details about our upcoming Name the Newsletter contest. The inaugural issue is slated for publication in January 2026, and all SABR members are invited to contribute original research, personal essays, poetry, photography, and artwork. We'll consider submissions on any topic, but prefer content with a Northern New England connection. The editor of our new quarterly newsletter is one of SABR's newest members, Megan Fuller Hanna, who is with us this evening. Megan is a former restaurant critic and correspondent for the Nashua Telegraph, as well as a previous senior editor of Lightwave magazine. She holds a BA from Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and an MA from the University of Delaware. Megan, where are you? Let's talk.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I am great. So I suckered you in. Oh man, I don't know what to say to you at this point. Why don't you tell everybody just a little bit more about yourself and how they can get in touch with you to participate in this great new newsletter that we're getting started?
Sure. All right. So as Bruce mentioned, I've been a writer and editor for over 20 years, but more importantly, and I think probably more interesting to everyone else, I have been a baseball fan since right around 8 p.m. on Tuesday, July 1st, 1986.
And she told me this story.
And I know it's crazy that I know the exact moment that I became a baseball fan, but that was the night that my dad took me to my very first professional baseball game. We went to see the Nashua Pirates against the Glen Falls Tigers at Holman Stadium in Nashua. And the reason why it is burned into my memory is because the pitcher on the mound that night for the Nashua Pirates was this 21-year-old kid named Jim Needlinger, and he threw a no-hitter. So I think when your very first professional game is a no-hitter, you probably have a better than average chance of becoming a lifelong baseball fan. And that is exactly what happened to me. So I'm very excited about helping Bruce launch this newsletter. And I really hope that everybody will submit some content. Like he said, we'd really love to see a Northern New England connection, but really we would be open to any baseball musings and memories and research, anything that you want. It's going to be the chapter newsletter.
And she's already told me that I have to write a column for this thing every quarter. And I'm terrified as it is, because we all know I just don't have that talent. Thank God she's an editor, because if she wasn't, I'd be in big trouble. So I got to ask, Megan, did you think that every game was like a no-hitter leaving Holman Stadium that night? Or did you understand that this was kind of a cool thing?
I think I understood right away that this was a really cool thing. You know, I'll be honest, I was 11 years old at the time in 1986. So I don't have crystal clear memories, but what I really remember from that night was this sense of camaraderie that suddenly developed among the fans on the third base side. Like all of a sudden people were nodding at each other, and like, we were kind of all in it together. It was like being part of a big secret. And I just remember really enjoying that evening.
This is a really exciting prospect for us, Megan. And I am so grateful that you have taken this charge to do this. And I can't wait to see your work. Now, I know you have two entries for the games project that you're working on. I'm not going to blow your cover on anything that you're writing on, but I know you're writing two, correct?
Right now, yes.
Okay, this is fantastic. So we're going to be seeing her name in the games project very soon. If you go out to the bio project, you can search Jim Needlinger's name and find his SABR bio and maybe read a little bit about that no-hitter that she was at that night. So Megan, tell them how to get a hold of you.
You can reach me via email. It was on the weekly message that Bruce sent out, but again, it's mfullerhannah@comcast.net.
And before we go any further, Dixie's got a question. Go.
Well, if you were 11 years old in 1986, that means you were born in 1975. Were you born the night of Game 6?
No, I was not. I was born at the beginning of the season. So I was born in April.
Just
but
in
I
case.
always thought it was lucky that I was born in a year that the Red Sox did really well.
I was at Game 6.
I was at Game 7.
That's right. You were at Game 6. I remember you telling me that story. That's right. Dixie was at Game 7. Yeah, I was at Game 6. I was up to see Fisk hit the home run. I was like, what's going on? I was so young. I didn't quite understand, but
I'm sorry. Game 7 was the most important.
What's that?
Game 7 was the most important game.
Oh, Raj, I will fly out to Cincinnati. I will do it. All right. Let's get on with our feature presentation this evening. At his Boston Portland studio from 1902 to 1909, Carl Horner expertly photographed hundreds of major leaguers. His iconic photos include the most famous portrait of Honus Wagner and portraits of many stars, as well as obscure players from the Deadball Era. These portraits appeared in baseball guides and on baseball cards of the era. Through his work, Horner, a Swedish immigrant, helped to popularize the great American game. In this presentation, Horner's life and work will be discussed, and a unique website at hornerportraits.org, launched in August of 2024, will be described. The site displays 450 of Horner's baseball portraits in a series of online galleries. The presentation will be given by the historian who wrote Horner's SABR biography and created this site. Dr. Stephen Rice is a baseball historian and SABR member. He's been a member of our organization since 2013 and has authored more than 180 articles for the SABR Bio Project and Games Project. In 2024, he wrote a biography of Carl J. Horner and built the website that he's going to talk about tonight. Dr. Stephen Rice, welcome to Northern New England, my friend. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. You have a lively group here.
Haha.
I will try to entertain.
It's all yours.
Okay, can everybody see my title slide here and hear my voice okay?
You're in great shape.
Excellent. All right, so Bruce gave a nice introduction to my talk. Most of you will recognize the famous T206 Honus Wagner card here on my title slide. But the story behind that portrait is what I'm going to present tonight. And the photographer who took this famous portrait of Wagner and took portraits of hundreds of other major leaguers between 1902 and 1909. And he took iconic images of the greats of the game, the superstars, Ty Cobb, Nap Lajoie, Cy Young, as pictured here. But he took portraits of every major leaguer, including obscure guys like Fred Abbott, Heine Heitmuller, and Kid Spear. You probably haven't heard of these guys. They had brief major league careers. And Carl Horner also took portraits of the managers of the era. From left to right, Brooklyn manager Ned Hanlon. In the center, Detroit Tigers manager Huey Jennings. And on the right, the famous Connie Mack, manager of the Philadelphia Athletics. Carl Johan Horner was born on January 28, 1864, in Stockholm, Sweden. He was the fifth of 7 children. The family was well off. The father owned a successful restaurant in Stockholm. But he died in 1882, and a year later, Carl, at age 18, decided to come to America. He found employment as an assistant photographer in the Boston studio of Ernest A.F. Ritz. Ritz was also from Stockholm. And like many immigrants, Carl learned about the game of baseball and played the game. And this little article that appeared in 1886 in the Boston Globe says the employees of Ernest A.F. Ritz have formed a team, and they want employees of other portrait studios to play against their teams, especially Elmer Chickering's studio. Elmer Chickering was probably the most prominent of the portrait studios at that time. And what do you know? Horner is listed as the second baseman on Ritz's team. Well, Horner was only 25 years old when he opened his own studio in Boston. This was in 1889, and this advertisement was appeared in the Boston Herald and announced his new studio. And Carl was assisted by his brother Axel until about 1900. Axel left to open his own portrait studio in Brooklyn. Well, photos of Horner himself are quite scarce, but here's one of them. I believe this to be his wedding photo. At age 28, he married 20-year-old Thorella Tilly Rosengren, who was a daughter of Swedish immigrants. They married in 1892. They had only one child, a daughter, Estelle, born in 1893. And here's another photo of Horner. This was taken in 1899. Now, we don't know exactly what equipment he used in his portrait studio, but I've shown a picture of a camera that was used in leading portrait studios of that era. And so his camera probably looks something like this particular model that was manufactured by Scoville. From negatives, he made gelatin silver prints following the standard practice of the day. While Horner thrived in Boston, his studio on 48 Winter Street, well, this was a pretty good location. It was a short walk from Boston Common, but there was a lot of competition. The Boston City Directory lists more than 100 photographers. There were at least 2 other photographers on Winter Street, in addition to his studio. So the competition was quite fierce, but he did excellent work, and he developed a fine reputation. In fact, in 1899, a list of 42 prominent portrait photographers of the United States was published. Only 2 of the 42 were from Boston, Carl J. Horner and Elmer Chickering. So already he was now being mentioned in the same breath with the famous Chickering. Well, Horner was not the first to take portraits of baseball players, not even the first in Boston. On the left is a portrait by G. Walden Smith, who was another of the rival studios. This is of the pitcher Old Hoss Radbourne. And we also see here a portrait taken by Chickering of Boston first baseman Fred Taney. That was taken in 1899, and I've included a photograph here also of Chickering. But these photographers only took portraits of the Boston players. And Carl Horner had a big idea. This was a very big undertaking. He arranged with the leagues to take portraits of everybody. First, the American Leaguers in 1902, and then the National Leaguers in 1903. And he continued taking portraits of major leaguers until 1909. By 1903, he was being recognized by Sporting Life as the official photographer of the major leagues. And his portraits were immediately very popular. They appeared in the Sporting Life newspaper and in many other newspapers, and in the annual baseball guides of the era from Spalding and Reach. So a reasonable question is how did this get started? How did this happen? And I don't know exactly how this came to be, but I have a pretty good idea that the man behind it was American League President Ban Johnson. So the American League was just starting its second season in 1902. And Ban Johnson clearly understood the promotional value of having photos of all the players in his league, his new major league. This image on the left, you can't, it's too hard to see the individual players, but this is a composite image of all the American leaguers that Carl Horner took photos of in 1902. And notice who's in the center of this. Yep, that's Ban Johnson. He was the kingpin of the American League, and he is the kingpin of this composite image. So Horner produced cabinet cards like his predecessors, G. Walden Smith and Elmer Chickering. Here are a couple of examples. Addie Joss. This portrait was taken in 1902, and Roger Bresnahan, 1903. Why are they called cabinet cards? They were designed to to sit on or in a cabinet to be displayed. They were about 5 by 7 inches. They were good size. The photograph was mounted on sturdy cardboard. And in the lower right here, you can see Karl Horner's signature logo that appears on each of his cabinet cards. Sporting Life issued a series of cabinet cards, more than 600, and more than half of those were portraits taken by Karl Horner, including this famous image here of Cy Young. And Sporting Life also issued team composites for each major league team each year during this period. A team composite was published, and not all, but most of the portraits in these composites were taken by Horner, and these are cropped images of cropped versions of the portraits that have been neatly arranged. This particular one on the right, it says 1906, but it's actually the 1905 New York Giants team. So there were at least a dozen baseball card sets that came out between 1903 and 1911 that used Horner's portraits. And here are 4 examples, starting from the left. Here's a portrait of Rube Waddell, and this was in a set by a company called Bryce Williams that was issued in 1903. So Horner hadn't yet photographed the National Leaguers, so only the American Leaguers in this set are Horner's portraits. The E107 is the designation of the set in the American card catalog. You card collectors are familiar with that. Next, we see a card from the 1906 Fan Craze set of John McGraw. All of the portraits in that set were by Horner. Likewise, the 1909 T204 Ramley set, you see here an iconic image of a young Walter Johnson. All of the portraits in that set were by Horner. And on the far right, you see this little round card. This is from a set called Cogan's Chips, and these round cards were tucked in circular tins of candy. And here we see Horner's portrait of a young Tris Speaker. Well, attempts were made to colorize these portraits of Horner. And here we see three examples. We don't know who were the artists who colored these, but Horner's portrait of Ty Cobb is here on the far left, was taken in 1907. And here are 3 different baseball cards that use the same portrait but were colored differently. You can decide which coloring you like the best. Postcards were very popular at this time, and Horner's portraits appeared in sets of postcards. Here we see left to right Joseph McGinnity, Eddie Plank in the center, and on the right Cleveland outfielder Elmer Flick. And wow, here are 9 different cards of Johnny Evers, all the same portrait. It was taken in 1903 when Johnny Evers was a rookie. So a reasonable question is, why did Karl Horner stop taking portraits of major leaguers after 1909? And I don't know the story, but I can speculate. On the left here is one of the team composites that can be seen in the Reach Baseball Guide. This is actually the 1908 Brooklyn team as it appears in the 1909 Reach Guide, and it uses Horner's portraits. But notice on the right here, this is how the Reach Guide portrayed the Brooklyn team in the 1910 guide. Well, it could have continued to use portraits, but what was happening is the action photos were suddenly in vogue. That was the style. So if you're taking portraits like Horner, this was probably a good time to stop. There were many other photographers who were out on the field at this time taking these action poses. So Horner continued his photographic work until his death in 1926, but he took few baseball photos after 1909. And after he died, his wife Thorella and daughter Estelle continued to operate the Horner studio until the late 30s. In fact, Thorella was a photographer and Estelle was the business manager of the studio. Thorella died in 1949, Estelle in 1978. And here is a current photo of the house where the Horner family lived in Boston for decades. In fact, Estelle lived in this house until the 1970s. So I wrote the biography of Carl Horner because I was so interested to know about this guy. And I thought somebody needs to gather all of his portraits and put them somewhere so we can see them. Yeah, put them on a website. And I decided I was that person. I was going to take this on. This was my big idea. It was a big project. The good news is Horner's baseball portraits are all in the public domain because they were published in the United States more than 95 years ago. But there are some real challenges to building this site. I needed reasonable image quality and resolution. I needed to verify the portraits were in fact by Horner and not by some other photographer. And of course, I needed the correct identification of the player or manager. Well, in August of 2024, about a year ago, I launched my website at hornerportraits.org. I encourage you to check it out. It's a free website displaying 450 of Horner's baseball portraits. There are no ads. There are no cookies. No one's going to try to sell you anything. It is just a public service. So let's contrast for a moment these portraits of the famous pitcher Big Ed Walsh. We see Horner's portrait here on the left, and there's a portrait by some other photographer. The one on the left was taken in 1904, one on the right about 1912. So Horner's portrait is formal. It was taken indoors. Player is not wearing a cap. The player is not smiling, and there are touch-ups. Touch-ups? Well, there's touch-ups still done in portrait photography today, and it was a common practice back then to apply touch-ups to mask facial imperfections. Horner made these players look like princes. That's exactly what Van Johnson wanted. He wanted the world to see them, not as the rough and tumble guys that they were, but as national heroes. The portrait on the right is informal, taken outdoors. He's wearing a cap. He's got a bit of a grin, and there are no touch-ups. So you might ask, why no smile in Horner's portraits? Well, at this time, portrait photography it followed the conventions of portrait painting. In 19th century portrait painting, big smiles were associated with madness, lewdness, loudness, and drunkenness. It was uncouth and inappropriate. Wow, this seems so odd to us now where we all smile for a picture. So that's why you don't see smiles in Horner's portraits. It was a very distinguished setting. It cost money. It wasn't very often they were photographed, and they were trying to make the players look respectable, even if perhaps they weren't. All right, well, Horner was not the only photographer taking portraits at this time. There is a fellow in Buffalo by the name of Harvey C. Wiesner, who is actually quite famous as a song composer and music publisher, but he also had a portrait studio in Buffalo. And he did for the minor league Eastern League, the same as what Horner did for the major league teams. So so how did it work for Horner? Well, when the major league teams came to play in Boston, they came to Horner's studio to be photographed. When the Eastern League teams came to play in Buffalo, they came to Wagner's portrait studio. So there are many of the portraits from this era are actually by Wagner. And in building this website, I needed to be careful to distinguish Wagner and Horner portraits. Now, in this case, so here both of these are portraits of Amby McConnell. He was with Rochester, New York in 1905, and the portrait here by Wagner. He was a rookie for the Boston Red Sox in 1908 when Horner took his picture. All right, well, the one on the left has, you can see a bit of the old English R on the jersey for Rochester, so that's a giveaway. But notice also the background, there's kind of a textured, marbly background in the Wagner portrait. The Horner portraits typically had just a solid background, so that was very helpful. So here are 200 of the 450 entries you'll find at hornerportraits.org. So Ed Walsh, Amby McConnell, if you click on the player's name, it takes you to their SABR bio page. And for each, I estimated the year that the portrait was taken. I indicated the team and the position for that player that year. So in 1908, Amby McConnell was the second baseman on the Boston Red Sox. And below the portrait, I put a quotation from a newspaper from that year about the player, something that maybe gives you a little sense of who this player was at the time their photo was taken. Ed Walsh was a rookie in 1904, but the Chicago Inter-Ocean felt he was going to do well. It said, "It is safe to predict that young Walsh will prove a winner. The big fellow has the speed and the courage and the skill of a high-class twirler." And indeed, he went on to a Hall of Fame career. Likewise, the Boston Globe had kind words about Amby McConnell. I'd like to talk a little bit about date estimation. One of the things I noticed was in the Horner portraits, the light source switched sides. That was on one side from 1902 to 1904, and then the light source was on the other side for portraits from 05 to 09. And that's illustrated here by these portraits of Doc Marshall in 1904. You see the light shining on one side of the face, and on the opposite side in the 1905 portrait of George McBride. The uniforms were very helpful. Here we see 3 Tigers on the 1902 team, and you see they're all wearing the same uniform, but the 1903 Tigers had a different uniform. So that was very helpful. I was able to date the famous Honus Wagner portrait to 1903. The Pittsburgh Pirates came to Boston for 3 series that year. And the first series from May 26 to 28, I think is the most likely time when this famous portrait was taken. The reason I say that is because by mid-June, Sporting Life was already reporting that that Horner had already taken everybody's picture. So I think, and that would make sense. The goal would be to have the photos early in the spring so that they were available throughout the season. I was able to date the Ty Cobb portrait, and this illustrates how I was able to use these composite images in the Reach guide to deduce the date. So I was looking to see, well, what was the first year that Horner's portrait of Cobb appeared in a Reach guide? And the answer is 1908. So the 1908 Reach guide, which was published just at the very start of the 1908 season, or before the season started. So that tells me this portrait of Cobb was taken in 1907. If we look at some stats now, let's consider the portraits, the 450 portraits at the website by the estimated year that the portrait was taken, and see a graph. So 1902, just American leaguers, a lot of them. 1903, a lot of National Leaguers. But you'll notice the number of portraits taken in the subsequent years, 1904 to 1909, that there were much fewer. And you might say, well, why is that? Well, if Horner already had a portrait of the player, they didn't come back to get their portrait taken again. And there were some exceptions to this, but as a rule, it appears that if Horner had their portrait, that portrait was just reused over and over during this period. So what was happening, and the reason there were fewer portraits from 04 to 09 was these are the players that he hadn't already photographed. And a large percentage of them were rookies. In fact, 68% of the portraits from 04 to 09 were rookies. Baseball card collectors are really keen on collecting rookie cards. Well, a large percentage of Horner's portraits are of rookies. I'm going to show you a few more examples from the website, and then I'll open it up for questions. So here we see a rookie, Frank Baker. He was later known as Home Run Baker. Third baseman on the Philadelphia Athletics. And the Philadelphia Inquirer was impressed with his fielding one day and reported that Baker was there with the pepper sauce, making a corking stop of a scorching liner on the third baseline. Wow, who writes like that anymore? I love it. Frank Bowerman was a lumbering catcher on the 1903 New York Giants, and the New York World said his strenuous efforts at foul flies captivates the audience. The more terrible his contortions, the louder the applause. Oh, I love the reporting from this era. It just fascinates me. On the left here is Jesse Burkett. He played left field for the 1903 St. Louis Browns. One day he raced after the ball and hauled it down sideways while the Philadelphians were chasing each other across the plate, only to find that their sprinting was of no avail. What an interesting way to describe a diving catch. And on the right we see another rookie, Mordecai Brown. In his rookie year, he pitched for the St. Louis Cardinals. After the season, he was traded to the Chicago Cubs, and he went on to a Hall of Fame career with the Cubs. But his rookie year didn't go particularly well, and the St. Louis Republic said just what sort of a pitcher Brown really is remains to be seen. He failed to deliver the goods here last season. And the favorite reporting that I came across while collecting these quotes came from the Baltimore Sun, describing the 1902 Baltimore Orioles. And I just love the quotes, so I've got to share a couple. On the left, pitcher Harry Howell was effective for 3 innings, allowing only 1 hit in that time. But in the 4th, he was shattered worse than mother's prized vase. Wow. On the right, left fielder Kip Selback. Boy, he had a bad day in left field. He was charged with 5 errors. 3 times did the festive fly appear to be actively engaged in resting confidently in his mitt, and 3 times did it continue right onto the ground. And twice did coy grounders skillfully dodge him. Oh, that was a rough day for Selback. I am wearing a replica 1903 New York Highlanders jersey like the one Jack Chesbro's wearing here. The Highlanders were the New York American League team, the precursors to the New York Yankees. And you'll see an image of me here taken by a local photographer in the style of Carl J. Horner. I thank you for your attention, and I open it up for questions.
So every time someone discusses the writing of the day of the early 1900s in baseball reporting, I I love the verbiage and the way that things are described. Shattered like mother's vase. That's just fantastic. I love that verbiage. We lost that.
It's so descriptive, isn't it?
Oh my gosh!
It paints a picture.
Yeah, it certainly does, and we've really lost that in modern day writing. Would you consider him to be one of the fathers of baseball cards from early on? Would you consider him to be that?
Oh, definitely, yes. Because while there were 19th century cards, the era, the Deadball era, especially from 1909 to 1911, there was just so many cards that were produced, and many of them used as portraits, and it helped to popularize the American game. I mean, in the 19th century, it was uncommon to see a portrait of a player it attached to a newspaper article. So the article will tell you about the game, but you rarely got to see a photo of the player. But with these portraits now this is what Sporting Life loved, because they would put out an article about some player, and they could put one of Horner's portraits with it. So yeah, this is before television. This was before people could see the players, and so Horner brought baseball to life, I think.
That's very interesting. We do have some questions for you tonight, Stephen. I want to first go to Gary Joquin, who posed a question in chat. Gary, you're up first. Why don't you give him that question? Go.
Yeah, actually, I've got three, but hopefully can get him in quickly.
Go get him.
With Horner's original camera, the one that you showed with the long bellows, how long did it require subjects to remain still to capture the image? I wonder if that might have contributed to the absence of facial expression, as well as the culture of the time, and whether or not his exit from portraiture in baseball might have been a function of better cameras being able to capture action movement, and his reluctance as a photographer to upgrade.
Interesting questions.
Okay. There are books on photography during that period, and I'm not enough of an expert to answer your questions, actually. I know that in the 19th century, especially, going back to like 1870s, it took longer, and the subject had to be still for longer. But I honestly don't know what it was like in, say, 1903. I think that so Horner actually did take a few photos on the field. There are some examples of that, but that was not his forte. And there were quite a number of other photographers who, in fact, they had to jockey for position. There were so many of them trying to get on the field. So I guess Horner decided he did not want to compete with them.
Interesting.
Can you say anything in general about the degree to which photography displaced sketch and portrait artists?
So in the 19th century newspaper coverage, there were many sketches because of the lack of easily accessible photographs that could be published in the newspaper. But here again, I'm getting out of my area of expertise here if I say too much about this. I know there are people who have written books about the evolution of this.
All right, let's go to Troy Olszewski. Troy, you're up, man. How you doing tonight?
Good. You might not have the information for my question, come to think of. Oh, go away. Is it breaking up?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. I was wondering if you knew how he was paid or compensated, because obviously he's taking the photos, but then they're being printed like each and every year and a guide put out by a different company. Was he getting paid for like all those guides?
I assume so. Yeah, I assume he's getting paid every time his images were used in baseball card sets. The cabinet cards he sold out of his own studio for quite a modest price. I don't remember the amount, but I converted it to today's dollars, and it was only like equivalent to like $12 in today's dollars to get one of those cool cabinet cards. Man, I wish I could have bought up a bunch of those. If you come across one today, you'll find that it's worth each one is worth in the thousands of dollars, depending on the player and condition.
Interesting. I wonder if he stopped in part because he had taken so many photos already that maybe he wasn't feeling that it was worth the money to have each and every player come and sit down when there were fewer and fewer players.
Yeah, I really don't know.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Couple of interesting comments in the chat. Dan Mason, the Highlander jersey is a really nice touch. Tom Emerson, great portrait of you in the New York Highlanders garb, Stephen. Could have been made better only by including some of that early 20th century journalism lingo in your bio. There's a missed opportunity, right?
Very nice. Yeah, good point. I like that. I hope you notice in that photo I have my collar up because that was kind of in vogue. A lot of the players had their collar up. So they may do that tonight.
There you go. Hey, Glenn Vassey's up next. Glenn, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you very much for all of this, and thank you, Stephen, for this delightful presentation. It's just
thank you.
Right up my alley. I really enjoy it. I was thinking when I started reading about this and knew what was going on about the Charles Conlon photos that the Smithsonian turned into cards, and then mega cards turned into a series of cards. I was wondering if there was were any plans to issue a baseball card set of these portraits, and
I had thought about it.
To buy some.
So I actually had thought about that, and I don't know if you've seen the Helmar art cards made by Charlie Mandel's company. He's in Detroit area.
No.
At any rate, he makes cards. You know, he now makes cards, but they're of these old time players, and the cards are designed to look old. So he has a lot of experience in card making. So I asked his opinion. He's also a longtime friend of mine, going back to grade school. And I asked him. I said, well, you know, could this happen? Could we make a card set from these 450? And right away he pointed out what I should have already known is you need really good high resolution images. Otherwise you end up with something that doesn't really look very attractive. It's kind of grainy. And then I realized that I may have sufficiently good resolution for 100 of the 450 only. But yeah, it's good. I think interesting card set.
I'd pick up 100 of them if they were available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gary Joquin in the chat, the slide where Frank Baker was described making a corking stop of a scorching grounder sounded like the writer may have taken too many swigs from the wine bottles. Oh Lord. Stephen, have you been involved at all with the baseball card committee?
The baseball card committee. No, I haven't. But I met Jason Schwartz. I think, does he lead the group? I don't
Yes,
remember.
he does. Friend of our
okay.
chapter, Jason Schwartz. You bet he's the greatest.
Yeah, I met him. So I gave the same presentation at the SABR convention in Texas in June, and I got to meet Jason and chatted with him. Yeah.
I can only imagine how much data and research could be sparked by you hooking up with that committee and beginning the sharing of all of this. This is fantastic stuff.
So one of the questions I've received is, okay, there's 450. How many more are there? And I don't know exactly how many Horner portraits are still to be found that I could eventually add, but I think it's at least 200. And I make that estimate because of images I found in the Reach guides, but they're too low quality to actually put on the website, but I know they exist.
So you're telling me that there's at least 200 more, in your opinion, that are out there somewhere that you haven't found yet?
Yes, that I haven't found in sufficiently good quality to go on the website.
Yeah,
they're just poor quality images from a Reach or Spalding guide primarily, but it allowed me to make note of them and know they exist, and I'm hoping that maybe people will contact me if they have some good high quality images that are not on the website, and that over time I will add more.
Very, very interesting. Hey, we got a couple of more. Next one up is Molly McClure. Wonder who that is.
Hi. First of all, thank you for this lovely presentation. And I was just wondering, have you tried the Library of Congress for any of the images?
I have not, and I haven't
because they're
tried.
in the general domain. You might be able to get them through the Library of Congress.
Yeah, that's yes, possibly, and the Hall of Fame also, Baseball Hall of Fame, I would expect has some. So I don't know if you know the name Jim Chapman, but he put together a wonderful sort of coffee table book on Deadball Era photography. He won a SABR award for that. And I met him also at the SABR convention in June, and we had a wonderful chat. And I knew that he had been to the Hall of Fame, and I asked him. I said, what do you think? Did they got a lot of photos in their archives maybe that I could add to the collection? And what he told me was that what he found at the Hall of Fame was very disorganized. So he was kind of pessimistic, but surely somewhere in their archives are more of these Horner portraits.
I would advise that you get in touch with friend of our chapter, SABR member, and patron saint of baseball research, Cassidy Lent.
Oh, I know Cass. Yeah, I interact with Cassidy. Yeah.
She is one of the finest people in our baseball community. And if she can't find it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I should reach out to her. She's helped me on other projects. Yeah, I know Cassidy. Yeah.
Cassidy, if you're watching this, do me a favor. Just send the check. Just put the check in the mail. Everything will be fine. Hey, Dixie, you're up, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. If Cassidy doesn't know where they are, she knows someone who does know where they are.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Stephen, great presentation. Fabulous. Now,
Thank you.
Think there might be 200 more photographs somewhere that are not very good. Not being very good aside, where do you think these 200 photographs are to be found?
Oh, gee. So mostly I found these 450 just by doing searches, Google searches, and I think the most I found in any one place was at a site called Trading Card Database, tcdb.com. And there was maybe about 50 of them there. But generally they're just scattered all over. There are some auction sites. Occasionally one of them will come up for auction, and they'll have a nice high resolution scan. So I really don't know. And I've also been asked, what do you suppose happened to Horner's negatives? And did he leave behind any cabinet photos? I don't know. I don't know. There could be a treasure trove somewhere, still to be found.
I wonder if
In what part of Boston was that house?
Oh, gosh, it's in the biography. I don't remember offhand, but it's indicated in my SABR biography of Horner. Yeah.
I wonder, do you think there's any of Horner's relatives around that you might be able to come in contact with? Maybe they've got something? I don't know.
So he only had the one child, and she never married, as far as I can tell. So there's kind of a dead end there, I think. Yeah, that would be quite a detective hunt, to see if they existed somewhere. My guess is when Horner's wife and daughter closed up the studio in the late 30s, I actually think they probably sold the studio to somebody. I don't know. Maybe somebody acquired those, acquired that in the late 30s, but I don't know the story.
No, maybe someday we're going to have a very big announcement by the baseball cards committee, or maybe SABR itself, finding these photographs and making them available. And Stephen Rice will be the guy that spearheaded the entire project.
I have actually, I interact, because I'm also a card collector. I interact with one of the leading auction houses called REA, which stands for Robert Edward Auctions. And I interact with the people there, and I've told them about the Horner site. And I wanted them to know about it, because sometimes they'll have a portrait that they're trying to describe, and they could check it against the website to see if it's a Horner portrait. I guess I did it in part because I've seen some come up in auction that are not Horner portraits. Arg. People think they are, but they're not. So I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to set them straight.
I love it. This has been very, very interesting. It is a different sort of presentation as opposed to numbers and whatnot. We've moved into the photographic history of the game. So I really appreciate you doing this for us tonight. It's a very interesting talk. Oh,
thank you so much for inviting me. It's a lot of fun.
Join us Tuesday, September 2nd, not Monday. Not Monday. Monday's Labor Day. Go out and have a barbecue. We're back Tuesday, September 2nd at 7 p.m. when we have Jude Butler with his presentation, The Legacy and Future of Baseball in Fort Worth. The sign-up link is available in the chapter meeting booklet and at the SABR events calendar. And finally, if you're a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our weekly uploads. And if you are not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research committees, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world, just like Stephen Rice. For more information, go to sabr.org today. Stephen Rice, you are exceptional. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Let's get everybody out of here so we can watch some baseball. Have a good night, everybody.